I want to say good morning and appreciate everybody being here. Someone asked earlier that was just joining us for the first time if they could stay muted, and you certainly can. We will probably have some time to answer some questions at the end. I would expect this to last around 35 to 40 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. And if we get done early and there's not a lot of questions, you all just get some of your time back. So with that said, we're here to talk about how to create and sustain good habits. And my concern in doing this webinar or this meeting, whatever you want to call it, is that I would create a huge guilt trip for people, because when you talk about habits, the first thing that comes to most people's minds are things like New Year's resolutions. And I want you to walk away. My goal is for you to walk away from this meeting this morning with a whole new idea and thought about habits. That habit change does not have to be a hard thing. It's easy to do, and in the words of Jim Rohn, sometimes what's easy to do is easy not to do. But I want to give you a brand new perspective on habit creation and sustaining those. I want to thank the Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce, the Ashland Alliance, and Ohio University Southern. They're our sponsors. That means that they promote the event. Lisa is co-hosting this morning to help me with the room admissions and keeping up with logistics. And so in this, what people are calling an unprecedented time, this way electronically of gathering together to be encouraged and to be helped in some practical ways, that's what this is all about. I also want to give some information on this particular seminar. I would say about 60 to 70% of the content has been taken from Atomic Habits by James Clear. I would highly recommend the book. I would highly recommend that you go to YouTube and look him up, and you'll hear much of the same content from his perspective if you do that. So I've got an easy job. I get to read and study and listen to a lot of people, and then bring it all together and simplify it so that it can be repackaged and sent out to people. So I hope that you get a lot of value and help out of this morning. I'm very excited about it. So let's get going. I want to start off by just telling you who I am, and I'll do this very quickly. But I've been married for 35 years to Connie. We have a wonderful marriage. I would say that's very much in the plus column. People say, Dave, how do you do everything you do? You do counseling, you're a deacon of the church, you stay busy. How do you sustain all that? Well, that is the reason right there. It's Connie, my wife. She takes care of all my logistical things and keeps me well fed and keeps me happy and tells me I'm wonderful, which builds my self-esteem, which enables me to be empowered to do these things. So she's wonderful. I've served hundreds of organizations in the role of the owner and operator of Beam Business Services for 17 years. Used to own a franchise with Action Coach. I'm now independent of that. And in that capacity, I'm a mentor, a trainer, and a speaker. At my church, again, I mentioned that I'm also a biblical counselor, do a lot of marriage counseling and personal counseling there. I am the self-proclaimed granddaddy of all granddaddies. Sometimes my grandkids have to be a little persuaded and sold on that title, but I hold it, and I hold it in high esteem. I love to play the piano, and my instrument of choice is a Tyrus 5 that's in my finished basement, and I enjoy going down there to chill. Some people drink. Some people do other things. I go and play my Tyrus 5. That's how I chill out and relax. And I have a passion to help people. So that's why we're here today. I do hour powers like this once a month. Right now, the intention is to continue that. I've started some new mastermind groups this year. They're just going extraordinarily well. So if you have an interest in that, you can email me. I do speaking like this with also companies and organizations and your group. And I do group coaching, one-to-one coaching, and again, the marriage counseling I do through the church, and that particular thing I do is free. So that's about me. And I wanted to take a little more time this morning to talk about that, but I'm sure you are anxious to get into the content of what we have to talk about. So if you're ready to be coached and challenged, here we go. Fasten your seatbelt. This is a common concept that I use with people all the time. This formula, this very simple formula, be times do equals have. And I want to start this whole time together with you off with this question. Why did you choose to attend this event? You knew it was about habit change. You knew it was going to be some thoughts about changing something in your life. And if we look at be times do equals have, you may say, well, I want to have something different, Dave. I am looking to gain more money, or I want to be a healthier person, or I want to be a reader, or I just want to spend more time with some other people, but I want to make that a habit. I want to change my habit in some way. And usually people want to change their habits because they want to have something. So that's, what do you want to have? That's the question at the bottom of the slide. But there's a deeper question here, and there's a more profound question here, is who do you want to be? What's amazing about habit change is habits actually form who we are. Who we are helps us form our habits, and our habits form who we are. I want to challenge you with a thought that this morning you can walk away here not with the same old, same old. How many of us have had the New Year's resolution? We've had the intention to change something, and we try it for a few weeks, or we try it for a few days, or maybe even we sustain for a few months. But we get worn out, we get tired, we give up, and we feel guilty, and we're right back to square one all over again. I'm telling you, folks, that can change today. And you might be a little skeptical right now because you've been through things like this before. Take your skepticals off and set those over here and be open-minded and just be curious this morning. And you can make up your mind later about whether this is just some more snake oil or whether this is really something that can help you. I am just so excited to share this because I think the potential here for change for you is just amazing. So let's look at this first concept. A lot of people have an interesting relationship with goals, and I am in no way wanting to put down the concept of having goals right here. I think goals are a great compass. When we identify the outcomes or the be do have, what we want to have, when we get clear about what we want to have, we can set direction and we can make decisions. And on this little slide here, that would be the outcome. But I'm going to tell you about a weakness on goals, and this is just a common sense thought. Everybody that really is serious about a race and enters a race has a goal to win the race, but only one person wins the race. Most people that enroll in things have a goal to finish, but everybody has that goal, and if the goal was sufficient within itself, everybody would finish. But not everybody who intends to do something gets it done. Not everybody who sets a goal accomplishes it. Am I saying that goals are not good? No, I think goals are very important. Goals give us clarity. Goals give us a map. Goals give us a direction. They're kind of a compass. But a goal by itself doesn't have the power to change me. We need something more than just the outcome defined. It's good to know where we're going, but then we need to start to talk about how to get there. And that, in this little slide, is the process. What we do leads to what we have. The process and the practices that we do lead to the outcomes. And James Clear in this Atomic Habits talks about these small changes. And I want you to really get your hand and your thought around the small change. It's a multiple small changes that really make the difference in life. Now, what's really interesting about those small changes that you can make, those small changes of habit, They not only produce an outcome, which is probably why you came to this thing today, is you want a different outcome. But what's really amazing is when we make these small changes that we choose, we're actually orchestrating a change in who we are. We're actually changing our identity. Now, it's interesting that identity will drive our actions, but our actions, when they're repeated and they become habitual, actually start to mold our character and who we are. And so what we're talking about today is a whole lot more about than just losing a few pounds or reading another book this year. We're talking about the potential to really start to change your business and your life. And I'm just so excited to talk about that. I want to talk about another concept that we've talked about on the Hour of Powers in times past, but I think will illustrate what I'm talking about right here in another way. Think about an iceberg. When you look at an iceberg, there's a small percentage, 10% or less of it, that you see. In a human being, that's our behavior. That's what we do. That's the words we speak, the actions we take. And I would say if you look at that little picture there, the habits are right there on the borderline. So our behavior, our words, our actions, it's what we do, and that is what produces the results. I'm amazed at people that want results, but they don't want to do the work. It doesn't work that way, folks. You got to do what you need to do to have what you want to have. But here is the problem. Here is the challenge. We have to sustain what we do. We have to stay with it. And that is driven by who we are. So this bottom part of the iceberg, there are things like desires and emotions and values and beliefs and philosophy. And at the very base of this iceberg is the identity. Actually, it's who we see ourselves. It's our self-concept. And it's the beliefs and the philosophy and the values and the emotions and the desires that grow out of that picture of ourselves that drives our behavior. And the behavior and the actions is what gets the result. So what are we looking at today? Today, we're talking about an environment change. You see, the environment is like the ocean around the iceberg. We're talking about a way not just to change our behavior through motivation, but we really want to look at inspiration. We really want to look at changing the essence of our identity. And what's amazing, folks, is if we start to behave a certain way consistently, we start to go to the gym every day or 4 times a week over a number of months, we start to believe ourselves. We start to change our concept of ourselves. When we start to do things in a methodical, complete way, that is really what changes how we see ourselves. What we say is who we are. What we say we are that. What we say we are is what we're doing. And that results in the fruit of the root of that kind of person. So I commend this slide to you. It's another way to look at the be, do, have, that if we want sustained behavior change, we really need to work on not just the actions we're taking, but the emotions, desires, values, beliefs, thinking, and philosophy behind those actions. And all that can change looking at the environment. So we're moving towards a practical thing this morning on how to do this. But I'm telling you folks right now that we all have plenty of books on how to do things. But it's not having the toolbox and it's not having the how-to that makes the difference. It's the identity. It's the value, it's your commitment, it's who you are as you pick that toolbox up as an artist and skillfully create things. It's who we are that expresses through what we do, and what we do forms who we are. And this all creates the outcome and the result. So I want you to really just kind of let that soak in for a minute. And then we're going to talk about something that really fits the current climate. We're going to talk about voting. Now, I'm not going to give you a political speech here and give you my political views. I'm going to talk about you as the candidate. We've got the old you and we've got the new you. We've got the existing you and we've got the brand new you. And this brand new you has a different set of habits than the old you. And what's interesting here is, if we think about it, is that you are in a campaign right now to change the old new. We're going to take the old new out of office and we're going to install the new you. Well, how does that work in the political world? We have to vote. And I love James Clear in his book, this Atomic Habits books, where he talks about that every time we choose to do that same behavior, that behavior that we've picked out that's going to change us, every time we perform that, we are casting a vote for the new you. Every time we skip it or we put it off or we don't follow through, then we're casting a vote for the old new, the old you. But you know, the thing here is the most votes wins. And every now and then as human beings, we're not always going to vote the right way. But what I'm saying this morning is if we get a process, if we get some planning here, some simple things that we can do to start making these consistent new you votes, folks, we can put a brand new person in the office of our life. It's time to vote for the new you today. It's time to really learn and pick up this toolbox and do this. And what I love about where we're headed in this little time together today is I'm going to show you how to get started easily. I'm going to show you that this doesn't have to be a big deal right now. It's getting started that is the most difficult part, and it doesn't need to be hard. In fact, that's part of the problem, folks, is people bite off too much. They try to go for all of it at one time because we're in the instant gratification culture. We're in a drive-through culture where I want to order it and have it done. I want to do this habit. I want patience, Dave, and I want it now. I don't want to wait around. I don't want to plant the seed and wait for it to grow. I want everything to happen right now. And folks, that's not going to happen. That's just not the way life works. It's a consistent change every day, patiently, one at a time, behaving, voting, and finally the new you wins. Here's another way to look at it. Creating a new habit is like raising the thermostat. Now, I don't know if you all know how a thermostat works, but basically it's a mechanical device that when the temperature, you raise that dial, you turn that dial or change that electronic number, it puts a pressure on the system to say until the temperature rises to where it needs to be, there's going to continue to be this activity in your heat pump to create that change. So we're putting a pressure on the environment for change. And it changes 1 degree at a time till it hits that comfort zone. So we reset the bar, we reset the goal, we say we want this, and we put this pressure on the system. I want you to do this for me right now. If you're sitting there and everybody's got their camera turned off, and that's fine. So I don't need to see you do this, but I'm just going to believe that you're serious with me today and you're going to take this on. I want you to take your 2 hands and I want you to clasp them. Just take your 2 hands and clasp them. Now I want you to look down and notice which thumb is on top. For me right now, it's my left thumb. I'm a left thumb person when I clasp my hands. Old habits are things you are. I'm a left thumb person right now. When I clasp my hands, the left thumb goes on top. Now I want you to do something different. I want you to clasp your hands and put the right thumb on top. Just feel that right now. How does that feel? Well, you've just turned up the thermostat. You've just declared something new, and it's not comfortable. That's something you had to think about and do. Put that other thumb on top. That right thumb on top person is the new person. That's the uncomfortable person right now because it's not familiar. But if you got up every morning for the next, let's say 3 months or so, and you decided throughout the day, every time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, every meal, you were going to put your right thumb on top and grasp your hands this way, eventually that thermostat would bring that temperature up and you would now be a right thumb on top person. That, folks, is the process of habit change. It's just that simple, and we're going to talk about how to even make it easier than that. But what I want you to get from this little part here, we're creating discomfort for ourselves. Habit change is not comfortable. It is outside the comfort zone. People love, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. People like familiarity. This is unfamiliar. This is not what your body is used to feeling. We're putting pressure on the system, and that pressure is what causes growth. And so we want to make this whole process as easy as possible, as doable as possible. We're going to talk about that, but it is an uncomfortable process. That's why it's so important to go back to the be, do, have. Who do you want to be? How do you want to change? Is it important enough for you to be uncomfortable? Where would you be if comfort had not been your goal all along? If you actually could throw the idea of just being comfortable out the window and decide to say that the change and who I truly want to stand for and who I really want to be before I pass off this earth matters more, then we would start to be uncomfortable. We'd start to do new habits and cast new votes for this new person. So you get the point. And here's the challenge. It's like the hand pump and the ice cubes. It's about sustaining tiny changes over an extended period of time. Habit change takes some time. That's just the way it works. Just like planting a seed and bringing it up and harvesting the fruit takes time. And so it's like a hand pump. Have you ever been to one of those hand pumps where you pump that water? You know, as a little kid, I don't remember how old I was, but the first time I saw it, I thought I was thirsty, and I thought, oh, this will be good. I'll just go over here and pull that handle about 3 times and get me a nice cup of water. And I kept pulling that thing and pumping that thing, and my arm started to hurt. Nothing was coming out. And I thought, this is a waste of time. This is ridiculous. And I gave up. Well, somebody else that knew a little better, I guess they lived on a farm, they came over and they started to pump that thing, and they stuck with it, and that thing primed, and that water came up, and one stroke would almost fill a bucket full of water. What's the point here? The point here is it's about sustaining change that is not visible. This is why it's so important to look at a change of identity, not just behavior. Folks, it's the fact when you stand on the scale day after day and week after week and the number doesn't move, and even sometimes it goes the wrong way, are you going to give up based on those intermediate challenges? Are you going to go forward based on what your ultimate change of identity is? I'm saying that we commit to the activity, not based just on an immediate gratification. We base on that activity on our chosen goal and pursuit of who we want to be, and we keep pumping through that valley where we don't see a lot of change. Phenomenal change happens in small little tiny increments that just show up one day when there's a breakthrough. So I'm going to take you into a freezer now. We're going to go in and look at these 3 ice cubes sitting in this freezer. And this freezer's set right now at about 27 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can imagine those ice cubes are going to sit there at 27 degrees and look like ice cubes. And now we're going to start that the power went out. So the freezer is no longer working, and the temperature is going to start to rise, and we have this thermometer in the freezer. And it goes from 27 to 28. And we look at those ice cubes and they look exactly the same, and they go to 29. And they haven't changed at all, and now 30 degrees, and there's this incremental change of temperature, and there's absolutely nothing that appears to be happening. But what you need to understand in the physical world is that we're building this potential energy, and every degree change starts to put this energy into the system. And when we hit that 32 degrees, that ice begins to change state, and it starts to melt. Folks, this is the process of habit change. We have to put incremental energy. Now, it's little tiny 1 degree, 1 stroke of the pump, and we don't see immediate results from that. But over the period of time, as we continue to put energy into that system, there's a point where we break through and we get that amazing change. And that's what everybody talks about, and that's what the media raves about, this great breakthrough company. What they didn't talk about were the years of the consistent practice, the coach out there running the wind sprints and the reps, The day after day after day after day after day after day habit that created the change. Just want to give you a sense for how this all works, and then we're going to talk about the process here in a moment. Right before we do that, I want to quickly talk about the 4 levels of learning. We're learning a new habit, so it's a learning process. The 4 levels of learning is a combination of things. Perhaps you all have heard this concept before, of consciousness and competence. So we all start off in learning unconsciously incompetent. I'm going to use the example of driving because I think it begs the point. My son, before he actually had driven a car, thought he was very competent to drive a car. Around 16 years old, never been behind the wheel. He's seen me do it for years, so it can't be too hard if Dad can do it. So he gets into the car for the first time, unconsciously incompetent. Now I'm going to mention here that my wife ended up being the trainer later on because I couldn't handle the nerves. But well, that's another subject for another day. But Nathan and I are sitting behind the wheel, and immediately with my poor instructions, he puts his foot on the pedal and puts the car in gear and almost causes whiplash, and then crams on the brakes. And immediately we moved from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. He was now very aware that he had no idea what he was doing. Here's the point. In habit change, we have to become aware that there needs to be a change. We have to first see what needs to change, and we become sometimes very guilty at that point. But we have to be aware. It's an awareness. This is where the Q part of habit change starts. Is you have to be aware that I'm not doing something that's going to produce what I want. There needs to be a change. I'm hoping that through what we've talked about so far, when I asked the be, do, have question, that you're thinking, there's some areas where I'm incompetent. There's some areas where I consciously don't know what I need to do. I'm really not real competent on how to change my habits. I'm consciously incompetent. You have moved up the stairs when you get out of denial and recognize it. So what did we do? Well, we stopped the car and I started to give him the steps, and he went through driver's training. And now he knows how to drive the car when he's thinking about it. He has to consciously put his effort towards the change or towards the learning. And while he's thinking about it and doing the checklist, and I put my seatbelt on, then I put the key in the ignition, then I do this. He's doing those things. He is competent at what he's doing as long as he thinks about it. What happens several months down the road, a year down the road? Well, he's driving and now he's unconsciously competent. He can drive that car. He's doing it all by habit now. A habit is installed and there's no real consciousness going on. The mind is now free to move on to other things because it's unconsciously competent. So that's the level of learning. And I think that's an interesting concept as well when we're thinking about habit change. So now we're ready to do it. Now we're ready to get something done. And so where are we going to start? Well, you got to pick out your habit. And I would really encourage everybody on the call today to say, I wonder what habit I would like to change. And again, James Clear in this Atomic Habits talks about keystone habits. So if you think about a keystone in architecture, and you see this picture of this arch here, that keystone is what lines everything up and keeps everything together. That it's in a key place in that structure, and it's right there at the pinnacle of the arch, and it's what keeps everything together. And so when we choose habits, not all habits are created equal. We really want to think about what habit would give us the most leveraged effect. And there's a book by Tom Rath called Eat, Sleep, and Move. So I'm going to meddle with you a little bit here, but let's talk about what are the habits you can change, you can start to work on that will get you the most change. And I'm going to give you one that you would find very interesting at first. Sleeping. Sleeping, Dave? Yes. Most Americans are sleep deprived. If you're sleeping less than about 8 hours a night, you are sleep deprived. What that means is you're not functioning at your full capacity. I've heard this many times. I've worked with a few people that have done it. When you change that sleep habit, you intentionally go to bed earlier and get your full night's sleep over a period of time. That's pumping that well. That's that 1 degree. That cumulative effect is you have more energy. There's a lot of things you'd like to do. You just don't have the energy for it. But that energy changes. And so now I've got a little more willpower to eat more healthy. And I feel like exercising. And I start to work more efficiently and more effectively. And I start to feel better during the day. And out of that, that one keystone habit of changing how much sleep I get starts to affect all these other actions and all these other activities. So some people like to pick just a simple habit of gratitude, just adjusting their psyche every day towards their creator to say, I'm thankful for being here on this earth. I really very clearly every morning and every night I think of one thing I'm thankful for and I write it down. Very simple habit, very easy habit, keystone habit. It changes your whole perspective on life. It's one thing you can do, one small little atomic thing you can do that can amazingly change things. So I want you to think about that right now. What is it that you would like to take on here and change? Hopefully you've got something in mind. And I think if you have that one thing in mind right now that you'd like to work on, that will help you gain the most out of this as we go forward. So now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts. You wanted to know a how-to, and you wanted something practical. So we're going to move from theory into practice right now. Again, James Clear in his book Atomic Habits talks about this process. It's been studied by psychologists, and it's started off with behavioralism with Skinner, and it's moved forward. It's a little more sophisticated now. It's a 4-step process of habit. This is the way habits work. There are 4 pieces. There is the cue. The cue is basically the thing that gets my attention. It's the thing that starts the habit. It begins it. And the key to the cue is making it obvious. It's something that we visually need to see. When I see the cupcake, then there's a craving that's created, a desire. That's point 2, or the second part of the cycle. So there's a cue in the environment that creates a craving. Then I respond to that craving to settle that craving down, to get some, satisfaction. And as a result of taking that action, the response is the action word, I'm rewarded. And that is the habit loop. What is interesting as we study these 4 aspects of habit is if we want to change habit, your habit change in the past, if it hasn't worked well and you haven't really succeeded, you are weak in one or more of these areas. Each of these areas can be looked as a toolbox, and we're going to take them specifically and look at some practical ways and some examples of how we can work on this. I want you to think a little bit about habit. I want you to think about your shopping habit online. If you're an online shopper, I certainly, I feel like I'm in one of those help groups. I am an online shopper. I'm a recovering online shopper. There are certain things online that I love to get on there. There is a satisfaction that comes. They make it so easy. Isn't that interesting? They really appeal to that desire. And there certainly is a reward you get when you click it and you got that package on the way. Amazon has figured it out. That's how they're making their money. Just the way that our body works when we're hungry. We see something, we have this anticipated reward, and we eat it. This is our phones. Do I need to say more? Most people look at their phone at least 150 times a day. What is that? It's a very simple cue. You hear the little ring, you see the little change, and you get that immediate gratification. It's this loop. I just want you to see that this is the way habits work. And we're going to use this knowledge and this research to figure out how we can make habits effective for us. We can start to construct our lives by making these atomic small changes. So let's look at the cue first. So important here, if you want to be effective in habit change, is you want to make things obvious. This is moving this into that conscious area, out of the unconscious area. We need to see it. We're mostly visual creatures. And some examples there is if you want to floss every day, you need to set the floss right on top of the toothbrush where you see it. That's just a simple way to change the cue. If you see that floss, you're more likely to use it. They did a research here. They did a little research project in this little cafeteria of this institution where they wanted to see if they could increase people's choice of water, bottled water versus soda pop. And all they did was increase the inventory of water in the refrigerators and place some more stations around with the little barrels with the ice and the water in it. That's all they did, was they added some of those in the cafeteria. And I think they said 37% sales of the water increased. Isn't that amazing? And there's this other study. I want to share it because it really plays to this cue thing. They had a group of people that wanted to learn, they wanted to start to exercise. And so a 10-minute walk every day. And here were the instructions. Group 1, all you need to do is take your 10-minute walk today and then just record it. Group 2, we're going to give you a motivational film to watch on exercise and the benefits of exercise, and you're going to record your walking every day. And group 3, all we want you to do is make a statement. And the statement is, I will walk at a certain time of the day in a certain location, and we want you to fill out that statement and write it out on a piece of paper. That's all you need to do, and then do your walk and keep your journal, and then we all get back together. 38% of the people that just recorded their activity walked regularly. 35% of the people walked regularly that had the motivational speech. Evidently, it wasn't a very good speaker. But what's interesting is the people that gave a specific behavior that they were going to take at a specific time in a specific location, 91% of those people did the walking over that period of time. Folks, that's enough to get anybody's attention, moving from the upper 30s to 91% just by taking one step. There's one little atomic change you can make today based on the habit that you want to create. I will do this behavior at this time in this location. If you already have a habit in your life that's good, you can actually link this next habit to that habit, and that makes it even more likely. Here's what you need to do. You need to change the environment, and you need to make it visible. You need to put the dental floss in front of your face. You need to put the water at the front of the refrigerator instead of other drinks that you really don't need to be drinking. The fact is, we need to make it visible. That's the first step of habit change, the first principle, the first tool of habit change. The second one is craving. The fact is, if it's attractive, we are more likely to do it. You need to pair a want to with a need to. So here's how it works with me. I love to walk in the morning on my elliptical trainer. Now, I don't really love the walking part because I basically am kind of a lazy guy. I don't physically like to sweat and move. That's not my forte. But I'll tell you what, I've learned to love my training in the morning. I've learned to love my walking in the morning, and here's why. Before I get up to do that walking, I have my cup of coffee, and I do love my cup of coffee. It's perfectly, exactly how I like it, and I've also loved to read my Bible. So reading my Bible and drinking my coffee precede my walking. And while I'm walking, I usually have some kind of video or audio program that I look forward to hearing. So now what I've done is I've taken all these attractive things that I love, and in my mind and in my psyche, they're linked to this walking. So I look forward to my walking routine in the morning because it's linked to all these other things that are attractive. There's a great way you can do this too with people, is finding a group of people or a culture of people, a community of people that love to do the thing that you're trying to do. They're all working on it together. There's that real sense of community that makes change attractive. So there's some real practical ways. We talked about how to change the cue, make it visible, make it obvious, and now change the craving, make it attractive. Let's work on the third part of the cycle. Make it easy. This is one that's very counterintuitive. Most people think and believe that habit change is hard. Habit change is not hard. Habit change is actually very easy. There's a way that you can make it very easy. What you need to do is you need to remove that friction. All of us have a built-in resistance to change. I think everybody would agree with that. How do we get rid of the friction so we just slide right into it? Well, there's several ways we can do that. And here's kind of the analogy that James Clear again uses in his Atomic Habits. If your water hose is slow because you got a crank in the line, you got a bend in the line, you can either just unbend that hose and get rid of the friction, or you can turn up the spigot and put on the pressure. Most people, when they're trying to do habit change, they think, I've got to get my discipline up. I've got to get my resolve up. I got to put the pressure on myself and just go high pressure and push and motivate and push myself to do this. Folks, there's an easier way. Just remove the resistance. Just make it easier to do the behavior. So what are some ways to do that? Well, here's the number one way that James shares in the book, and I think it is amazing. The 2-minute rule. Now, this is very counterintuitive, and some of you are going to buck back at this a little bit, but just hang in there and listen to me and find it interesting. Here goes. Take your habit change that you want to institute and break it down into the various components. The smallest 2-minute starting piece. So, for example, I'm going to go for a run every morning, Dave. The first thing I need to do is put on my shoes, put on my running shoes. That's the habit, period. That's the only habit you have to create, is putting on your shoes. Maybe it's in reading, I need to read 1 page. Maybe I just need to sit down and pick up the book. Maybe that's the habit. And maybe that's all I do for 3 weeks, is I just say at 6 a.m. in my easy chair downstairs, I'm going to sit down and pick up this book. I am not committing to any more than that. I don't have to do any more than that. That's easy to do. That's so easy to do that I can do that. I might not be able to commit to reading 5 chapters a day. I might not be able to commit to reading 15 minutes a day. But whatever you can commit to that's easy. And at the point that that becomes too hard to do, you're going to lose out here and it's not going to work. This is so counterintuitive. There's a guy in the book that lost 100 pounds by doing one thing for, I think it was 3 weeks. He just got in his car and drove to the gym and then came home. And he did not go in and exercise in those 3 weeks. You're thinking, that's stupid. Why would you not go in and exercise if you're already there? He was trying to create a habit. If you want to create a habit, it has to be something that's easy to do. If he creates the habit of getting up every morning and driving to the gym, then he will follow through later and he can start to continue to build that habit and to build the activity. But he already has that subconscious, unconscious part established. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. You prime the environment, you make something visible, and you do something easy. That's what we're talking about here. Technology can automate these things. You can put things on auto pay, like people that want to save money. Set it up so that every check that comes to you, a percentage just goes into savings. That is a habit that you don't even have to think about. That's something that you establish and you let the technology do it. Folks, this is being proactive. This is taking some ownership. This is saying I'm no longer going to be a victim and make excuses for not changing. I'm going to work on this and figure this out. I'm actually creating a new life. I'm creating a new identity. I'm creating a new person. One small habit, one small change at a time. Then there's the reward. This is the fourth part of the cycle. It's why we change things. It's why we do things, because we want an outcome. And here's the key to effective habit change. We need to make it something that's satisfying. And again, James in the book talks about this. The immediate reward that works so well is the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling that I did it. And so a checklist is so important here, or a calendar. Let me give you a couple of examples here. There was a guy in sales that really, he was in insurance sales. All he really needed to do was make his calls every day, 120 phone calls a day. Now, there's a lot of hang-ups, there's a lot of that. We could go into all that. But the fact is, he just needed a habit of making 120 calls a day. And here's what he did. He took 2 cups and he put 120 paper clips in one cup and the other cup was empty. And every time he made that call, he had the satisfaction of picking that paper clip up and dropping it in that cup. It was visible and it was satisfying. It was a little game that he played with himself. And the guy turned his career around by moving paper clips from one cup to the other. What are we saying here? You've got to find something simple that you do that makes it very satisfying. Last year, I had a Bible reading schedule that you would check off the boxes when you completed it. I don't know why psychologically this worked. I tried for years to read all the way through. This year, I had this schedule, and these little boxes that I checked, I'd even have fun some days and read ahead and check ahead, because I could say, now I'm a little ahead of the game. But making it satisfying, making it enjoyable. So that's what the habit tracker is. And the idea here is you want to get consistency. You want to do small things consistently at first. You don't want to break the chain. So Jerry Seinfeld, everybody pretty much knows who he is. Great comic, maybe one of the funniest guys alive. What does he do? He writes a new joke every day. Sometimes he writes great jokes. Sometimes he writes lousy jokes, but he never misses a day. He always writes a new joke every single day, and then he puts an X on his calendar. That X on the calendar is the job done, completed. And that's why checklists feel so good. When you have that list of tasks to do and you check it off, that is the reward. That's the psychological feeling that it's good. That's what makes it satisfying. So there's our 4 different things. Let me just move back here and look at that. We've got the cue, make it obvious, the craving, make it attractive, the response, make it easy to do, and the reward, make it satisfying. Folks, with those 4 principles, you can change your life. You can change your business, because you can change that one small habit at a time. So let's talk about what people usually do in terms of mistakes. The mistake they make is they take on too much. And they try to change too much at one time. Take a small piece of a keystone habit and take that first step and implement it. I like to talk about it in these terms, the change formula. D times V plus FS is greater than R. It's not algebra. It's just simple psychology. The fact is, we all have a built-in resistance to change. We talked about that earlier when we got started. To overcome that resistance, in this formula, there are 3 things that need to happen. There's a B part of it. There's the subconscious part of it. We have to be dissatisfied with where we are. We have to be aware that we're not where we want to be. We have to come out of denial, and we have to admit, I am dissatisfied here. I want this to change. It's time to change this. But you know, just being dissatisfied and not happy with where I am doesn't make the change happen. I need to put that with a vision. I have to have that goal. I have to have that picture of the change. I have to have that new you picture. I have to have the old you picture and the new you picture right there together. And in that emotional dynamic of I'm ready to change, that's my motivation. I need to take some small first steps to break the inertia. If I will add a small first step to this desire over here, I will overcome that resistance and change will begin. And then if I sustain that change by using some of these practical tools, I have changed my habit. I'm going to finish up here with this part of it, and then we have time for a few questions with the be, do, have. It's where we started. And earlier I asked you the question, what do you want to have? Why did you come to this thing today? Why did I sign up for this? It's because you wanted to have something. And I said, well, there's a more important question, is who do you really want to be? How do you really want to change as a person? Not just your habits. And now I'm going to leave you with the most important question of all for today is, what are you going to do? Because you can be dissatisfied and you can even have a clear picture of who you'd like to be, but if you don't do anything, you're not going to have the result. And that is where I'm going to leave you today. What are you going to do? And I would love to help any of you change. That's what I do. That's my life's calling, is to help people with positive change. That's what coaches do. We help people improve their performance, improve their life, improve their business. And with that said, here are some additional opportunities. We have more of these events. I'm planning to do these for the rest of the year, one a month. First of the month, probably first Wednesday of the month will be about, and you'll get notices. You're on the list.